This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Ayo Haynes. And we're going to talk about scripting motherhood and how to adopt as a single woman and thrive. But I want to welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to talk to the people from different walks of life and different types of career paths. And we do have your URL open there, the openadoptionsuccess.com. That will be fully clickable, and we'll get into that more as we talk to you. But we always ask everybody that's on the show a couple questions before we get into the heart of your story. So, what is it? What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess we have to go back to childhood. I have always been that person that wanted everyone to be happy. And I just didn't understand when people weren't. It just did not make sense to me. And it didn't make sense that I couldn't make people happy. I mean, years later, of course, I realized that's not my job. But I do have a special skill set that I believe can help people who are in need of answers and have questions. I'm always that person that people call up and tell their problems, and I'll come up with a solution and they'll go, "Really? Oh wow, why didn't I think of that?" So I'm a sharer. My name actually means joy, and so that kind of lends itself to understanding my personality and wanting people to be happy and to live a fulfilled life. I believe that we are all here to live to the utmost what God put us on this planet to do. And it could be as menial as just being happy. It could be
Yeah,
that. You don't have to complicate it.
well, some people would like have a hard time giving themselves permission structures to be happy. So,
Absolutely.
it's difficult because I find people, I talk to a lot of folks on the podcast, and a lot of times people at certain point in their life, let's say in their mid age, they discover that they pushed down their childhood dreams and they ended up taking on things that really weren't who they were. Right? They maybe it was who they thought they were, but it really wasn't their authentic self. And then they
That is
find they're like,
that
oh,
is
I
it.
need to actualize.
Yeah, that is so key. And that's part of the work that I do in asking my clients, well, what did you want to do when you were a child? Because basically, when we go back to that time, that is the most genuine answer of who we are, what gave us the most excitement and discovery. Not that I wanted to be an archaeologist, but because I what I love about archaeology, and that's what I wanted to be as a child, as an archaeologist, I love discovering things. I love
Mhm.
digging deeper and finding out and getting to the core. And so I think if we can work around those type of things and those questions that really get at the heart of what it is that lights us up, we will be on a path of happiness so much faster than trying to live up to societal expectations.
Yeah, because sometimes you get the expectations of what your family business or your like what's been everybody's been a doctor, everybody's been a lawyer, you're expected to go that way, or you're expected to do better than your parents, so they have the expectation that you're gonna go and do a path. Maybe it's not you, but then you take it on because you feel like, well, I gotta satisfy what they expect of me, and
Well,
it's
those expectations unfortunately become handcuffs, right? We sometimes give up on our dreams, as you were saying, because we just can't get past what other people believe we should be doing, which kind of lends into my journey to motherhood through adoption, right? I was always under the impression, and not rightfully so, it's a societal norm that we grow up, we get married, and we have a family. And that just didn't happen to me. It wasn't
Mhm.
the path that was readily available. Not to say that I didn't have suitors and didn't have proposals, but that it wasn't the right person to, for the right time, to have a marriage come about, to then have a child. And so at a critical point in my life, I realized I could be trapped by societal norms and just let that be the decision maker of my life and the rest of my life. Or I could say, what makes you happy, Ayo? What are you unwilling to leave this earth without having experienced? And I can ask that question to myself for many areas of my life, but the one that was most prevalent and most upfront was motherhood. And so I said to myself in my 40s, well, you've gone this journey of trying IUI and IVF for your by yourself. And it was okay to be a single mother that way, but why not be a single mother through adoption? And
Mm,
it didn't occur to me
yeah,
until I was already on that path that, hey, I could do it this way.
that
And
that's
I don't,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, the husband will come afterwards.
Well, I think people have to like there's certain like there's a mindset out there today. There's a very set mindset among certain people, certain groups. They have very strict roles for men and women. Like they think that women are only actualized if they're in a certain relationship, if they're in certain roles in society. And it's very restrictive in the modern this is the 21st century.
Right.
And you're like, why are these people in your business? Like it's like if you choose to like whatever you choose is your path. And why does anybody have a right to tell you how you should be? But there's a lot of people
Absolutely.
seem to be sticking their nose somewhere like, well, did I ask you to do that?
And but that's a key thing because so many of us will conform. And I guess I'm not a conformist. I guess I've
Yeah.
always marched to my own drum and I brought my own drum with me. And so it became a time of reflection on who is Io? What do I stand for? What do I want? What is important? Um, what do can I not live without? What can I live without? And did I really matter? Did it really matter who thought what of me? Now,
Mm,
obviously, I'm not inhuman and I have feelings and I have emotions. And when it came down to it, the only person that really mattered in the decision making was my mother. But then
mhm.
at that point, I said, this is my life. It turned out that she was very supportive, but it's still my life.
It's still your
And I
choice. Yeah.
know, yeah, I have people who are clients who are still unsure if they're going forward because of what their parents, who are in their 80s,
Yeah. But they have
think about their
expectations.
lives in their 50s.
Family people want the family line. I think that with adoption is people get so caught up and like, oh, it's got to be my genes, like it's got to
Yes,
be my family line. Where it's like it's like there's so many kids today that need adoption that are in like these situations happened, but you got all these people say, well, it's got to be my genes. So
right?
then they don't even think of that as an option. I mean, they it's like it's not even in their wheelhouse because they can't get over that hump, you know?
Yeah. I've seen that and I have witnessed it. And it's sad because, especially if you're talking about a couple where there are two people, one wants to have a child, the other doesn't. And because one believes it has to be my genes, and it's generally the male, they are then imposing their will on their partner. And then their
Mhm.
partner has left to deal with the aftermath, right? And saying, okay, it's fine. I don't really need a child when their heart's desire is to have a child. I think when I was younger, I had that kind of thought of, oh, I would love to see myself replicated and look at myself. And then I got older, like, that doesn't matter. Who cares? Right? I want a healthy, loving child. And even if we were to have a child together, it's a crapshoot if the child's going to look like you, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's always
And
that. Yeah, I mean, it's about, like, being a father or a mother, like,
right,
like, you can be a father
parenting,
or mother without a parent, without, it being your kid, right? There's a lot of examples of people being better parents than their biological parents.
absolutely. And
So, you don't have you just gotta have that, like, feeling that you wanted to do it, like so what inspired you like, one of the questions you like to answer, is like you had a career defining role in Hollywood and then you decided to kind of walk away. Was it this that made you want to walk away or something else?
No, it was I was, had auditioned for a comedy show, a top comedy show, and they did a switcheroo on me at the last minute with the script, and the script was absolutely not in alignment of who I am,
Uh-huh.
and I could not see myself doing it, and I had the wherewithal to understand what the internet was, and that if I did this, it would be there forever,
Oh,
and
yeah.
my that is when I could say I absolutely thought about other people in my life and how that decision would affect them. I didn't want my mother to be embarrassed by me. I didn't want my church to be embarrassed. I wanted to be able to live with myself. And I said, you know what? I'm walking away. And so in the middle of after the table reading, I left and people were scrambling. So it had nothing to do with motherhood because I truly believe we can balance it all. As a
Mhm,
career woman, I can balance. I can have the baby on the hip and take a phone call and close $1 million deal, no problem.
mhm.
It was my integrity that was more important in that particular instance, and this is actually many years before adopting my daughter. But we one of the questions that I ask in the questionnaire that my clients take as they're coming into my practice is how do you feel about your family and their feelings, right? I walk them through a whole list of questions, giving them a chance to have a conversation with themselves to see where it is that they stand. And you better stand 10 toes deep in that decision, because if you don't, you will be pushed to and fro by everybody's opinion, and everybody has an opinion. That is for sure.
Mhm.
And so, even with me deciding to make my own daughter's formula and not serving a formula that I found in the store, there was like people in my family like, "What are you doing? What? Are you
Everybody has an
sure?"
opinion.
Yeah,
Everybody's got an opinion here.
everybody's got an opinion. We know that saying. We won't. And so you have to, as a single parent going down this path of adoption, there are so many things that can come up as roadblocks and deter you or push you off your game and push you off the path. You have to know what it is that you want. For instance, I was very clear that for my situation, I needed a child who was healthy physically and didn't have any disabilities because I was an actor and I was and still am a real estate agent, right? So I'm an independent contractor. There's no If I'm not working, there's no salary. So I
Mhm.
knew for sure that I needed a child who was well in body and physicality. Now, there are other people who are able to take on and adopt into their home a child with disabilities. I knew that
Mhm.
was not my case in my situation. So I stood on my ground, even though the agency questioned me and said, well, couldn't you? I was like, no, that is not what I want and how I envision myself as a mother. Another person will, and that's okay. But we have to be respectful of people's decisions on how they create their family.
Well, I think it's important to be honest with yourself because some people might feel like if they're challenged with that, even though their true feelings is, "I probably can't take that on." But if they get, like, kinda guided to it because they feel like, "Oh, well, I'm not actually doing I should do that." But, like, well, if you know yourself, it's like, "I can't do that. I have these other things I have to do."
Right,
But sometimes people get pressured by the moment or these other things and these expectations, and it's like you have to have that looking glass self conversation. You know what
right.
you who you are, where you are, and what you want. But some people get confused, like, "Well, I don't know what I want," but you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you
Well,
do."
that's where I come in. I come in as a coach to help you. And the agencies, they have their directives, right? They have to adopt babies. They get paid to adopt babies, and it's not cheap. So, um, you know, if you are willing to take a child that's not in your adoption plan, then great. That's one baby that's placed, and they get a placement fee. You
They
have
have an
to stick
interest
to
in
your
that.
gun.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's a people have multiple interests, and you gotta not get pressured just because, somebody's that's the problem. Sometimes people cave.
Yes.
because they don't have the resolution to kind of stand on what they believe. Like you've already mentioned, like you were given a role and it didn't align with who you are.
Right.
And some people will take that, will do it because, well, I
Yeah.
need to, yeah, I'll just take because I don't that's not the primary thing in my life to represent,
Right.
my character. Like
And
seems
it's
like your character sometimes is not important to some people.
well, I think it also comes down to having a child is so emotionally charged, right? Especially if you want a child. Even if you were pregnant, right? There's so much expectation and desire around that baby that's coming. Same thing with an adoptive parent. You are on a roller coaster up and down. And they're going to like me. Is the birth parent going to select me? Is my brochure pretty enough? Is it all of these questions? Is the home study person going to approve my house? You can be a nervous wreck if you don't have a method of dealing with the stress and all of the things that are coming at you. But I don't want to say that it plays upon, but some agencies or people who work for the agencies can realize how desperately you are
Mhm.
in desire for a child and play upon that and say, you should take this child. You may not get another for another year. You
Uh,
can't play that game. You can't play that game. You're like, nope, the right child is coming, and I will take my time and wait sure the circumstances are right. And the circumstances involve even the birth parents, right? Are you able, especially my whole practice is encouraging open adoption, which means we are in have a relationship established between the adoption triad. The adoption triad is the birth parent, the adoptive parent, and the child, right? So with open adoption, you have this incredible relationship that is fluid and it's growing, but it's respectful, but it's grounding most of all for the child. And so if you have this child that's being presented to you, and your desire is for an open adoption, and you know that the birth parent is not really going to be someone you see actively in your life or your child's life over the years, you may decide, you know what, this is not the right situation for me. That's a personal decision and not one to take lightly. But there are all sorts of things that go into the consideration that you have to bring forth on the adoption journey.
yeah, it's important. I was wondering also in terms of support system, like if you come at it with where you're a single parent, single mother, taking on the child in terms of support system, what are like the criteria to be able to know that you've got that network of people that will assist? Is that something
Yeah,
you
that's
have to
actually
actually plan for and keep in mind when you're going through the adoption?
Yeah, that's actually one of the questions that I ask. What is your support system like? And even if you don't have a support system, that doesn't mean that you can't adopt. That just means that you have to be mindful of who you're going to bring into your circle in order to go through this process. I mean, I'm someone whose both parents have passed away and before my child was born. And as an only child, I really had to work hard at pulling those people in to my inner circle, whether they be cousins, godparents, being very
Mm,
intentional about who you choose as godparents, that they're not just there on paper, but they're actually there to really
actually there,
instill, right,
physically
and
there.
to uh, encourage that child as they grow up. Who is your boss? Do you have a job that is going to be okay with you being out for a few days or a number of days? How do you find the right sitter or the
Mhm.
right nanny? Because as a single parent, if you're working 9 to 5, you will need that
Mm,
extra help.
yeah,
Now,
you're
if
gonna
you
need the
have
nanny, you're gonna need the,
or
actual
grandparents,
babysitters, you get or at least have that kinda extended family that, like an aunt or a godmother, somebody in that spectrum, they're gonna be able to be there consistently, like you said, not just on paper. Like,
yes,
who's actually gonna I guess people will sometimes say, "Yeah, I'll be there," and then when you call them, they're not there. It's like,
yep, that
who's
happens.
actually gonna be there?
That happens. So it's really important to make sure that you have pulled in key people to support you.
Yeah, that's something that happens. It's like you never know. It's like, "Oh, I figured they were gonna be there," and then he's like, "Where are they?" You think you can't
Yeah.
find them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if
But,
you're traveling, if you happen to adopt outside of the country and you're traveling to another country, you have to have a job or at least a conversation with your boss to say, I have to let you know what's going on in my life. I have this major life transition going on. I'm adopting a child in another country. I have to go there. They tell me it's going to be a 2-week wait, but honestly, it could be 3 or 4, right? You need to let your employer know that so that you're not coming back fired, right? You need that job. So being open not just applies to the adoption triad, but it means being honest and open to the people in your community that are immediately surrounding you, your support system, and in your workplace.
yeah, it's important today with, like, some careers are so intense, they expect you to be doing 120% and, like, have no personal, like, life at all, and, like, so, and
Yeah,
if you had been doing that, and then suddenly your boss suddenly sees it, "Well, what, you're not doing it anymore," but it's like, "Well, because now this adoption or my family is important." So what's like,
absolutely.
so it becomes it's like, oh, it's like, can they handle that? Can your boss, can your workplace handle your shift in your life? Because, like, up to that point, you might have been there
Right.
and they didn't think about it. And then when they have to think about it, do they have to think about it hard, or are they going to support you?
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is it's the same question that would be asked if somebody was in a marriage, right? And they
Yeah.
got pregnant. It's the same thing. There's still the same expectations. Yes, you do have a lot more responsibility on your hands because you are single. But again, if you have that community that's already prepped and they know what is needed of them, what you expect and need of them, then it makes it so much easier.
So in terms of getting past, like, self doubt or fear in this type of decision, when you're working with people, like, are those two things like the big um, roadblocks, or there's other factors like that
Yes,
prevent
that
people?
I think one of the biggest roadblocks that I work with my clients to get past is, can I do this? Do I have what it takes to be a single mother? I'm now 40 or in my 40s. Did the time pass? Should I just settle for not being a mom for the rest of my life and make that okay? Or can I put aside what I've made very comfortable in my life? Like I travel so much and I do, I go out at the drop of a hat if I want to for with dinner with my friends, all of these things. Yes, it's going to be a lifestyle change, but that doesn't mean that you're dead, right? I mean,
Yeah,
my
I agree
motto,
with you. Yeah, there's a benefit. Like, for everything that gets taken away, there's a benefit that comes in, and it might not
absolutely,
have equal weight. There's some things might be more, they actually, like, pull on the heart. Like, there's the
right.
heart, and then there's, like, the things that you're used to, and the things that they might seem hard, actually very satisfying to your heart and soul. So that could be what the balance is.
100%. And I always said, even before I had a child, my motto was have baby, will travel. If I traveled, which I did, I've been to all 50 states. I was in a job on TV that had me traveling every other week. I love travel. I have a wanderlust. I never saw myself giving up that part of me. No, I envisioned myself actually having my baby on my back or my hip and going and seeing things and letting her explore and find things. So actually by the time my daughter turned 2, we had been to 5 countries and it's like, let's go. Right. I'm one of those people who believes that um babies can sleep anywhere. Like I had friends when I was still single and I would invite them out and they're like, "Oh, we can't. The baby that's the baby's nap time." I'm like, "And the baby can nap anywhere," right? I was determined to make a resilient child that could sleep anywhere, fall asleep with noise going. We went to concerts. I had her with the headphones on. I didn't stop living, right? So at in my 40s, yes, I became a mother and there were things that I gave up and I made decisions to put aside, but then on the same token, there were things that traveled with me, that came forward with me, and made my early days of motherhood very characteristically still me.
Well, I think that's always important to kind of keep your authenticity of yourself and not be in the comparison trap. Because a lot of people like they want to be like the Joneses, and they think that but you're gonna be who you are, and like
Right?
your style is gonna be like influenced about like your core value. That you might be influenced by other people's values, but you have your own core values, right? So then you have to like decide. It's like that's okay. Like this is what you want. You have your own vision, and you have to be in alignment to give yourself the permission structure that your vision is okay.
Absolutely. And speaking of vision, like I before I adopted my child, that whole year before, I made a vision board, which is what something I do in every year around the end of the year. And I put not only myself in a relationship with men, not men, but a man on there, but I also had babies all over this thing. And it's so funny to see that so many of the things that I had on my vision board, career wise, family wise, home wise, they all came true except for the husband. But it was, I when I reflected on it, I was like, wow, I did put a little girl, and I didn't put boys on. I actually put a little girl on my vision board, and that's what I had. So vision is so key. If you can
Yeah.
see it, it can happen.
Well, it's like I'm a Buddhist, and we feel like if we have affirmations and we do our chanting and we do we can make it happen because we feel we're going to be in alignment with what our path is.
Right.
And we have this idea that like, well, there's a positive kind of law of attraction. If I stay positive,
By staying
then
positive.
all
Oh,
those positive things will. I don't know what. Yeah, but
oh, there.
yeah. So, but you don't want to be affirming like the negative. You want to try to stay on a positive kind of a idea of abundance, like an abundant mindset.
100%.
Especially if you're gonna be a parent, you probably shouldn't be in like there's a kind of like I'm a limiting belief, imposter syndrome. You should probably try to work those things out. I guess in terms of like thinking about that, like in terms of yourself, like stability and your understanding, what's your recommendation for people who are maybe not in the right place? Well,
Yeah, well, get a hold of me and answer those questions. I see you have the question, the link to the questions there. They're very thoughtful questions, right? There's no right, no wrong answers. We would talk them through. I would ask more probing questions. It really comes down to assessing who you are right now, who you were, and who you want to be. And positivity is absolutely key. I remember even people would say, "Oh, wait till the terrible twos." I'm like, "Well, I'm not embracing that. I'm not going to embrace that behavior as my end all be all. There's nothing I can do about it." No. Right? So it is mindset. It's deciding what it is that you want for your child. What it is that you want for yourself beyond your child. What do you need to have happen? Because one of the other things we don't realize is that when we don't live in our alignment and in positivity, we are living in regret. And regret, in
mm,
my opinion, is one of the worst emotions that we can experience as human beings. It keeps us trapped. It keeps us limited with limited beliefs. It keeps us not going forward to achieving what we were put on this earth to achieve. I think we all have a mission. And so if we have the ability and the power to do to get around the regret, let's do that. Let's
yeah,
put on our big girl pants and confront the fear in the mirror.
Well, this whole idea of like scripting, scripting motherhood sounds like that kind of like reprogramming or reframing in your brain. Like this idea, I've talked to a lot of life coaches that talk about scripting and kind of like, they actually prompting themselves to
Yeah.
be like where they want to be, where they want their head to be.
Yes.
And, and it seems like, yeah, that's a pretty cool approach because you can reprogram your mindset. Your mind can be altered to be on the path if so you're outside of that limiting belief, you're outside of that,
Yes.
imposter syndrome, you can get out of that.
It's so true. It's funny. So many people, after experiencing time with me and my daughter, and she had a very unique personality as a child, very friendly, very loving, and funny. And they would say, "What did you do? Like, how did you get this child? What I need to know what you did in for her to be this way." And I just said, I just decided what characteristics I wanted, and I would foster that. And what characteristics I didn't want, I'm not going to foster that. I'm not going to entertain negative displays. Uh, Whether it's for her or my reactions, I one of the easiest things that I could relate this to, like we all have desires, food that we like and we don't like. And I said, you know what? I don't want my likes and dislikes to affect her. So I'm going to give it to her and act like it's good. I know it's good for her and she needs it, but because of my hangups, I'm not going to limit her. And
Mhm.
so she grew up not with the hangups of food and different types of food that I had as a kid. I was
That's
incredibly
cool.
picky. She was
Yeah.
not picky at all. And I would make up games. I would call it different. Like I made prunes. I said they were nature's gummies. And she's like, nature's gummies.
And
And
then
so,
she wants them.
right, it's all mindset, right? It's how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
present it.
Yeah, that's a cool thing to do because, yeah, my father, he didn't like vegetables, he didn't he was kinda like meat and potatoes guy, and, but I was able to get out of that because, like, I'm really into I got a organic, like hydroponic garden, and I'm eating all these
Nice.
veggies, but it's like you have to sometimes, like, your parents or you get into these patterns that you come from your household and like, "Oh, I don't like this, I don't like that," and, when I lived in Japan for 2 years, and, I had to I ended up getting really into, like, that, Japanese sashimi and sushi and, like, every restaurant I could find that wasn't American, I wanted to try
Right.
because I had never been exposed to that, I was living in New England, so I was, like, exposed to, like, New England seafood, but that's not Japanese seafood.
Right.
So, like, if you once you can get outside of, like, your comfort zone, you can explore, and it's cool that you didn't put that limitation, like, of what you were picky about, which is I
Absolutely.
think a
And,
lot of parents don't think like that. So that's a
yeah,
different mindset.
and part of my coaching goes into, okay, you've gone through this whole process and now you have a baby. So now what? What do you do? How do you raise that child? So my coaching doesn't just stop at you achieved your goal of adopting. There is so much more that needs to happen that doesn't necessarily get passed down um, from parent to parent. And we there are certain behaviors or family isms that we need to leave behind and move forward in a new way.
I think it's really important that you take in all the considerations, and one thing we hadn't talked about is, like, financial considerations. So, that's kinda like the maybe the bottom line budget type stuff, but when that comes into play, is how do you address that with your clients?
Yeah, so it's a conversation. So I'm a real estate agent, right? So I'm always asking people about their finances, right? It comes
Yeah,
natural
can
to
you
me.
afford this house or not?
Right. I see the tax returns and I see this, it's like, and then I forget it not long ago. Like people don't have to worry about us like minding their finances, right? The questions that we ask around finances are actually going to be questions that the home study person is going to do. They're going to
Mhm.
really get in there. They're going to ask for your insurance, your W-2s, your tax returns, your insurance, your stock thing, everything, right?
Yeah, they
Because
want to
they
see
have
the
to,
yeah, they
right, they
show.
have to paint the picture for the adoption agency that you are actually financially sound to raise this child, right? You're not going to be homeless after paying these thousands of dollars to adopt the child, but you'll actually have money afterwards. And so, yes, as a single parent, there will be times that you won't be at work, right? You should absolutely take your maternity leave. That's due you. But there might be times where the child is sick and you have to take off. Um, Being sleepy and tired is not just for the person who birthed the child naturally, but it is absolutely real as a new parent that you will need that time. So you want to make sure that after all of these years that you took to make the decision to have a child on your own because of life circumstances, that you're not in a job where you're working all these hours and you never see the child and the child is always with the nanny or whoever. You like give yourself that liberty to enjoy this time of
Yeah,
being a mother. And so I encourage people, especially since I'm a lifetime entrepreneur, to have a little side hustle that might just take over for your 9 to 5 eventually, or it's just there adding
as
a
a
little bit
backup.
of
Yeah,
money so that
backup.
you don't have to put in the hours at the office otherwise.
Well, you gotta have that time to have the emotional relationship because,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing about, having children is, sometimes a lot of times, like, whoever is the breadwinner ends up being out and then they depend on the other parent to be in the house taking care of their emotional support. But when you're the primary and there's no other person, then you have to find a balance, right? It's all about balance. Like,
Yes.
you've gotta find a time where you're gonna give the emotional support that's required for a kid or a young like baby to have that bonding, 'cause
Yeah.
that bonding. So how much training do the adoption agencies and everything go through in order to prepare people for the actual, like, okay, you're gonna have this baby in your life. Now
Not
you need
much.
to know how much of that do they do any of that, or is it just that's
There'll be some classes that you can take, but that's really, there's some sites and coaches that have post-adoptive services, but the agency, in my experience anyway,
that's not
there wasn't a whole lot of that, and so that led me on my journey as well, right? Yes, my first class of motherhood and mothering and parenting came from my own experience with my mother. But when it comes to making it practical, you know, along the way, we pick up little things and we say to ourselves, when I have a child, I'm going to do this. When I have a child, I'm not doing that. Right. And so in cultures, and sometimes it happens here in the US, right? But it's in Japan, they absolutely have it where someone from the family comes in and stays with that pregnant woman for about a month or so, helping with food and the baby and letting her sleep and all of that. Many cultures have that. In the US, we're kind of sometimes it depends on the culture of the family, but it's not necessarily something that happens automatically. And
yeah,
so it leads to siloing, right? And that's not what we want to do as a parent. We don't want to be silos. We don't want to be these lone um, beings trying to tackle this huge task that's going to be at a minimum 18 years, maybe 21, maybe they stay in the house for 25, right? It's a lifelong goal and
yeah,
thing that we have to do. So just as a career woman, most of my clients are in their 40s and they're career women, right? What made them successful at work is what's going to make them successful as parents, right? You're respectful, you keep your commitments, you are working in groups, so that
mhm,
would be your community, and then you have your times when you're doing your solo projects and stuff like that. But unless you're an entrepreneur, selling hot dogs on the street and it's just you,
yeah, it takes like a village, like, it's a
it
whole I
takes
think that
a
your network.
village.
Yeah, with
Yeah,
the network,
exactly.
everybody looks at these CEOs and they say, "Well, they did it all themselves." Like, no, they didn't.
No, not
It's like
possible.
nobody does it all themselves. It's like it's the network, it's the communication, it's all those people that were in that
Absolutely.
startup. They're all pulled together, and now this guy's the face of it. This
Right,
person's the face of it, but there's all these people behind it. Like they're
right.
part of it. And whether or not people are honest about like who else they helped them or they take all the credit and say, yeah, yeah, I'm the genius that did it. It's like it's just they're pulling the whole network together where it's like your neighbors and your friends and your family and everybody in your community, like your spiritual advisors, whatever, like
Yeah,
the people there in that in your I don't know, your whole ecosystem
yeah, and
for your life. Like you have to have that. Or if you're trying to just be out there, be a be the cowboy type of thing, it's like that's not
right.
gonna it's not probably not gonna go well.
You're a single parent, but you're not alone. You have to have a community. Um, and if you're lucky enough to have family, that makes life so much easier. If you have to build your family through friends, which is what I had to do, it's been wonderful. It's a wonderful experience to be able to recognize that blood does not dictate whether you're
Yeah.
family or not. And and then you just get to discover the people who come along the way on your path, and they join the sauce and make it really good.
Well, it's just awesome to have like the network of like close confidence of people around you. Like if you when I was an artist, like I get this whole group of people around me. And we've been around for a while and we're all kind of connected. It almost feels like a family. It's not the family, but it's the family of people that were in my artist community. And they become confidants. They become people who are there. If you build from that, that's the communication you have to do as a human being to be able to build that network for whatever you're doing. And then when you have a family, have a child, it's even more critical that those people are actually like the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the topic of today's show, like scripting motherhood, you as a single parent have to be very intentional about what you want for your life as a single parent, right? And I don't want my clients to just go, okay, I have my child and that's it. I don't have to do anything else. I
It's
don't
just
need
off
to
the
find a
checklist.
partner. Right.
It's
Everything else
it's
falls
just a
away.
checklist. Yeah, it's just like marking off the checklist. Maybe that's not the right
Right.
motivation.
Well, look at parents who their whole life is their child. Not good. I don't want that
Mhm.
for my clients. I want my clients to have a healthy, balanced life where they are absolutely parenting and caretaking their child, but they also make time for themselves. Like for me, I love karaoke singing. So I go out with my best friend and we go karaoke singing. We have that time, whatever it is. Like, is it tennis? Is it dancing? Is it going to the movies? Right? You have to still keep going as a person and growing so that you can absolutely bring this child along with you and grow as well. And you're not lost in just being a mother because that's wrong, right?
Mhm.
We are not just one role for the rest of our life. No, we're
Yeah,
multiple roles.
that's where people sometimes get confused. I think in our society, they it's like, well, you're only this or that. Well, you could be a mother, you could be a CEO, you could be an artist, you could be your friend, you could be, there's multiple hats everybody's wearing. But there's
Right,
some people that are so rigid. They're like, you can only be this. And you can
right.
only be that. And then if you get that stuck in your head, you kind of need to get reprogrammed because it's
Yeah,
like you're gonna hit the wall
yeah,
because because eventually you're gonna have a like an argument about like which role should I be, or I feel shame because I'm not the role I think I should be. When you actually
right.
could have multiple hats at once.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that women go through all their life. We have been programmed that our lives should be one way. But then society changes, our place in society changes, and we are able to do so many things. There are so many life transitions as I reflect over my own life in going from grammar school to high school to college and learning who I am as a young woman, going into the workplace, acting, and all of these transitions take a lot of effort. They take mentorship, they take self reflection, and we don't give ourselves enough time to do that. A lot of times, our families don't give us enough time to do that, right? Because we have so many things that we have to do. But it is crucial, and a key thing to do is to have that time of self reflection. I think that's also one of the reasons why I just have been working so hard on this summit that I've put together. And it's called the She's Extraordinary Summit. And it's Dare, Dream, Achieve. Because sometimes we don't have enough gumption to dare. We need to
Hmm.
be pushed sometimes over the edge to do the next thing. Um, and then to dream. Some of us have turned off our dreams. We
Yeah.
don't dream for ourselves. We dream for our kids. We dream for our family. We dream for this, but we don't dream for ourselves. And then to achieve. It's good enough. It's not good enough to dare and to dream, but we actually have to accomplish it. And so I'm so excited about this summit, which is going to be next February in Vegas, to encourage women to dare, to dream, to achieve, to look at what your life non negotiable is, and to actually put in a plan of action. And we do it all around music, A-listers, and it's going to be a great time.
That's awesome because I think people need to be aspirational and they kind of, a lot of times people get put into like a people pleaser role and they kind of subjugate themselves. Like they
Yes.
don't, and so then they don't feel the need to like, okay, there's shame in actually wanting to do what you want. Like, so if you try to say like, well, I want to be an author, like, well, you should stay in this role. Like, I want to go and be an actor. It's like, well, you should stay in that role because like that's so they're putting this shame as a people pleaser. Sometimes there's a lot of resentment because you're not really doing what you want. You're doing
Yes.
what you think people want you to do.
And that is a full circle conversation, because that is what I encourage my clients not to do. And it's not easy. It is scary. It's very it shakes you at your core, if that's the only thing you've known, if that label that they've put on you is the only label that you've been able to operate from, it's the only glasses you've been able to look at the world from. It is really hard, and that's why you have to do it with a coach and in community. And but it's not impossible. It is absolutely possible. If I told people all the things I achieved just because I was like, all right, I can do it. And then I start doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I say that I could do this? But I'm already in it, right? So I say, do it scared. You're already going forward. And then when you get
Mhm.
ready to turn around and say, I think I'm not ready, I'm there to go. We're going to push you along. Keep going. You got this.
Yeah, the challenge is always important. I've always felt like you got to be kind of put your foot in the deep end a little bit because like once you know how to handle the shallows, to get to the deep end, it's a little harder. Like
Absolutely.
you don't want to get yourself where you're drowning in it, but you like sometimes you have to like dip a toe in it, then you dip your foot in it, then you go a little bit more and then
Yeah.
push it a little bit. To you start to get climatized to where you are. Like
Yeah.
if you start to push it as an artist, we have to push genres. We have to
Yeah.
cross into something I might not be good at. It's like,
I'll tell
oh,
you a funny story. I was on vacation, and it was like the first day, so my hair was still good, and I was like, I'm not getting my hair wet. I'm going into the pool. I'm giving you this analogy, following your analogy about the pool. And so I'm walking, I'm like, I'm it. And then I didn't realize there was a really deep dip off. And
oh,
so I went head down under the water, totally not pretty at all. It was like, oh,
oh,
and I was like, "Oh my gosh, for all that effort that I put in to look good in my hair, I still got wet, and I still I there was something that was totally and completely unexpected. And guess what? I survived. Not only did I survive, I laughed at myself. And so that's what it's all about, right? There're going to be mistakes. There're going to be
Mhm.
drop offs in the ground where you feel like you have just the bottom has been taken away from you, but you survive.
I think that's important because like people get that first step because they think they're gonna hit that drop off, but even then you can recover. Like you can recover, and it's actually important to kind of have these like low, like I call it like happy accidents, like things that happen. You get lessons learned.
Right.
So like maybe in the time we have left, we can talk about lessons learned. Maybe like are there maybe three top lessons learned by going through this process that you can kind of relate to the audience
Yeah.
that might be key.
Stick to your guns. Stick to your guns about what it is that you want for your life. I would say make sure that you're not doing it alone. Yes, you're single, but you're not alone. You need to have people who you can say, I'm really scared. And what about this? Or should I make this choice? I think one of the most poignant things I've discovered as a single woman is that the decisions that I make solo are generally not my best decisions. And if I think that I don't have anyone to share with or talk with and talk it through, I make some bad decisions. But if I have somebody to go, I gotta ask you this. I don't know what I'm gonna do. What do you think? And then I can say, that sounds good, or no, that's not it. But
Mhm.
more than likely, again, that siloing is not a good thing. You have to be part of a community and you have to have people that you trust to give you good advice. And then, third, enjoy the process, enjoy being on your path to achieve that thing that you've always wanted, which is motherhood. And know that with everything that comes down the pipe, you're okay. It's going to be fine. You're not going to break the baby, right? Your life is going to be enhanced. There's no perfect time to start the journey, but there is a finite time for motherhood. As far as if you're going to go with an adoption agency, they have sometimes they have age requirements. And then if you want to be of a certain health for that child and have a longevity for that child, you do want to do it sooner than later. And
Mhm.
then lastly, I'll give you a bonus. Go to openadoptionsuccess.com and get in touch with me. Let's have a conversation. I do have a Facebook group that is a community of women, and that's just starting. So that's exciting. And there are other women along the path. Some may be further down than you, but it's a great place to find a sister to walk with you on the path to motherhood.
Well, I think that's a great. Those are great examples, and the resource to be able to go to your website. That's always um, useful for the audience. And I've always indicated to everybody who ever watches the show, those will be clickable in the description of the podcast, so you'll be able to fully click through. You won't have to remember that. You can just click through and we go right to it. And we have your other um, URL that we have up as well. So the one with the
For the
questions.
questionnaire. Hmm.
Yeah. So the people click on that, they actually go to your questionnaire.
Yeah, they'll go to the questionnaire, they'll fill it out. Again, no right or wrong answers. When you finish, is get on to my calendar and let's book a time to talk.
That's awesome. And we do appreciate if all the people who watch the show do check out the links. We're going to have both of those in the description of the podcast, so you won't have to worry about it. And we do appreciate you being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast. So
Thank you
thank you
so
very
much.
much for being on our show tonight. And you brought an issue that we've never actually had this topic. So I think this is valuable. The reason I do the podcast is like to try to find new people to talk to, new voices. And this is a really interesting topic. And there's probably a lot of people who have probably been looking for this. And now we put it out there in the world. So the law of attractions, people will find it. And then they're looking for this. And then now they found a resource when they were looking, like, has anybody experienced this? Has anybody done this? It's like now we've put this out here.
Yet you hit it on the nose. That is exactly why I'm doing this, because I wish that I had had someone doing this for me that could be a resource.
That's important. That's why I love to be able to talk to people with the different voices, different experiences, and then bring that as a, to pay it forward, as they say, like pay that forward and let people know that there's a resource out there for you to check out. So thank you again for being a guest on the Family Electricals podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.